everyone to Open Austria's third episode of the Digital Imperative series, Education for the Future. My name is Kylee Mebust and I will be your moderator today. A few things before we get started. If you haven't attended our Digital Imperative series before, welcome. If you have, it's great to have you back. Digitalization has become imperative for countries, companies, and individuals around the globe. In the Digital Imperative series, we've been exploring how Austria is handling this transition. In each episode, we talk to political representatives, entrepreneurs, academics, think tanks, legacy companies, and creative minds from both Austria and Silicon Valley. Our prior episodes have focused on sustainability and tourism, so feel free to watch them on YouTube if you haven't already. We would also like to thank Salesforce for their gracious support of this series. And finally, I'd like to mention that this event is part of the Austrian Foreign Ministry's Refocus Austria campaign. This is Austria's biggest global outreach program and is a key pillar for the Austrian government's plan to rebuild the economy as it emerges from the COVID-19 crisis. The campaign focuses on the core pillars of Austria's forward-looking economy. These pillars include renewable energy, e-mobility, sustainability, digital transformation, and much more. Without further ado, I would like to get to our main event, Education for the Future. Education is changing, and the needs for the future are evolving. And the pandemic has in many ways accelerated this shift. Today, we would like to talk about digitalization and this shift with our panelists and see what the future holds for education. With this group of panelists, who all join us from different perspectives, we will dive into the what, how, and wheres of this transition. So in this webinar, we will take a few minutes for a short round of introductions, then tackle each what, how, and where in approximately 10-minute segments. And at the end, we'll hopefully have a few minutes for the audience Q&A. If you have any questions during each segment, feel free to throw them in the chat and we will get to them when we can. So let's meet those panelists. Joining us from Vienna, I'd like to invite Dr. Jasmin Séra to introduce herself.
Hello and welcome from my side. My name is Jasmin Séra. I'm a teaching and research associate at the University of Applied Sciences for Management and Communication here in Vienna. Yeah, Kylee, you asked us to talk about our experience with the education field. So I will start with that I've been a student for a long time. So I got some experience from different fields. I studied communication science and social and cultural anthropology at different universities. So I studied in Austria, in Ireland, Scotland, Spain, and New Zealand. So I got to know different ways of teaching, and that has shaped me a lot. Also moving from one country to another, I was constantly confronted with digital education. So I not only studied most of my life, I also worked, most of it in the education sector. I've been working in this field for a couple of years now, and I have to say that this COVID-19 pandemic has shaped my experience quite a lot. At the moment, I work within a research project that is funded by the city of Vienna, in which we also investigate the digitalization of communication. And we look at how students and lecturers' experiences have been changed and also shaped by this pandemic. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you for joining us, Jasmin. And next, also joining us from Austria, I would like to invite Marko Haschej to introduce himself.
Thank you, Kylee. Hello, everyone. My name is Marko. I am one of the founders of Moonshot Pirates. So we encourage young people between 15 and 19 to dream big and to follow their own path and to start working on ideas for a better tomorrow. So we often say that we educate young people on how to create a better world, how to make the world a better place. And that happens either with their own ideas while they work on them, or by working with companies, advising them on sustainability, on fairness, on different topics. And everything that we do with Moonshot Pirates is basically built on 3 pillars. So the first one, we call it Moonshot thinking. So this is all about this topic of personal development. It's about learning how to set high goals. It's about also when you set high goals and sometimes you don't achieve them, how do you cope with failure? It's about developing the right habits to become successful. All these things, that help you to grow personally. The second topic that we cover with Moonshot Pirates is in the field of technologies. So this is very much influenced by the Silicon Valley, where Kylee, you are sitting right now. We want young people to develop an understanding of where the world is moving and what can I do with technologies such as AI, virtual reality, 3D printing, blockchain, and the likes. And we really want them to think about how can I use those technologies, those innovative approaches to develop actual solutions for the big problems out there. And the third part in our program is all about entrepreneurship. So, you have learned about yourself, you have learned about the world, about technologies, now do something about it, take action. And this is then where actually the educational impact gets created. Or where it actually happens, where the magic happens. Because once young people start working on their own ideas, they gain important skills for the future. They learn how to apply theoretical knowledge from school in real life projects. And this is why we call ourselves an educational initiative, even though amazing, amazing projects get developed within our programs. And yeah, we have different things that we offer to young people. It's programs where they work on site on their ideas, so-called boot camps. Our signature event actually is an online challenge. It's called the Be a Pirate Challenge. So we have the last time we had participants from 85 countries joining, working on their ideas to make the world a better place. But we have also programs where we focus a lot on this topic of personal development, where they work on them on their personal journey, learn how to set goals, all those kinds of things. And yeah, we founded Moonshot Pirates about 3 years ago. Since Corona, we are a global organization. I have been working with young people. I think it's now 104 countries. And it's been an amazing journey so far, and a lot of interesting learnings also for me personally. And yeah, I hope I have the chance to share a few of them also in the next couple of minutes here with you guys.
Well, that's very exciting. Thank you for joining us, Marko. And finally, joining us from the Silicon Valley of the North, Seattle, I would like to invite Sam Priddy to introduce himself.
Thank you, Kylee. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me here. This is fantastic, and especially a great group to be a part of and speaking about education. So my history is a little bit checked with different industries, but for at least the last 17 years in each of the industries that I've been a part of, developing and delivering education has been a huge part of my role. Part of it's just personal interest, and then part of it also just because there's such a huge need for people to be able to understand and implement so many of these different skills, especially with digitalization, to their lives and careers. Most recently, I'm with Tableau, a Salesforce company, which in this role, I've got the great opportunity to be able to go in and help people understand and use what we would say is data skills, basically. And as we look at it, especially right now, there's such a huge need for responsible citizenship of the world, and to be able to really critically think about all the things that are going on around us. And it's an area where there's a lot lacking. And as an organization, it's part of the reason that I stay there is there's a big social aspect to it, and making sure that we're putting back into the world as much as we're taking from it. And this is a big part of it. It's just understanding how we can educate people more effectively and how we can give them the skills that they can use to be able to apply it to a new career, or just, again, to be a responsible citizen. And the last part of that is just accessibility and equity, right? In this world, not everyone has the same opportunity. In this program, which I'll talk about a little bit as we go through, part of the part that attracted me to it is just that there's so much focus on leveling the playing field and giving people that wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity the skills to be able to do something more, and to be able to step into roles that would have previously been untouchable. So it's kind of a passion and excitement, and then also to just a great place to be. And I can't wait to talk a little bit more about this topic with all these folks.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us as well, Sam. And now let's dive into our conversation. We're going to start with the what's of education for the future. So I guess my first question for you all is, what do students need to learn, specifically about digitalization to prepare for the future? And maybe as a caveat to that, what new digital skills are necessary? And does anyone feel inspired to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I have no problem. Yeah, I think this question is quite interesting because I have a different view than the guys here. I work in the public sector, and we try to prepare our students for the future by giving them, let's say, maybe more I don't know, like more traditional job roles, for example. But of course, we also understand that these are changing, and that makes it quite a challenge because we work with curricula, for example, we do revisions every 5 years. But what happens if technology changes within these 5 years, So what we have to do is constantly evaluate what we're teaching. And also, because I would say we're not like in the easiest times right now, we're facing a global pandemic. At the same time, all these technological changes, we also have to work with this new generation Z, let's say, and they're also different, which is good. Change is always good, but we need to re-evaluate and reflect all the time what we are teaching. And that also involves, for example, consumer behavior. So all this is something that we need to take into consideration. Also, and I think is the most important and most exciting part about this question is that we're dealing with jobs maybe we don't know nothing about right now. So we are trying to teach our students best skills, best competences to really for lifelong learning, like we can't send them out after our bubble and say you're ready. Maybe they are not, and they have to be self-conscious enough to work on themselves and to just keep on walking and develop new skills. And that's also the exciting part, I think. Yeah, I think that's it from my side.
I think that's great. And I love the idea that you're thinking about that long term, and it's not just that one specific thing. I think from a digitalization perspective, there's just constant anticipation of change. I think if there's one thing that digitalization, that change, or that means for us is just that there's always going to be new things to learn and absorb, especially for new students or folks that are coming up out of school or university. Just that when they get into the role, it's been prepared as one thing, but it's going to morph and change the entire time. And being flexible and being able to find methods of quickly absorbing and synthesizing and using that information is going to be critical. Obviously, I stand on the data side of it, and we firmly believe that students need the ability to be critical thinkers, to be able to analyze and take in that information. And regardless of what industry you're in, if you're, I'm in the data industry, but even if you're not in that industry, using that information to be able to accelerate the rest of your journey is going to be critical. It's a big piece. And like you said too, Jasmin, and I love this, is just that the jobs may not exist at the moment. The job that I'm in wasn't a job that I would ever anticipate, and it's something that was created. So being open to being flexible and being a consistent learner often places you in things like that where you weren't anticipating it. So I love that too.
So in general, I 100% agree with the two of you, Jasmin and Sam. One thing that I really liked about this session when I saw the invitation, and thank you for that, was the title, because it was Education for the Future. There's so many discussions going on where you talk about education of the future. So what is education gonna be like in the future? But nobody actually talks about what should be the outcome of education for the future. So I really like that one. I think I even posted it somewhere. The thing is, Sam, what you said with data, I very much agree on that. We have now more access to more information on our phones than almost all the presidents, US presidents had before with the entire intelligence. And I think right now or in the future, it's gonna be more of a challenge of, first of all, where do I find the right information? When we went to school, we were taught knowledge. We had to, I don't know, memorize some knowledge, some information. Now information is available. So I think the young people today need to learn, where do I get the right information and how do I validate it? So is it actually true? It's a fact? or we had a lot of those conversations going on in different political areas recently. So that's one part. And also what Jasmin, what you said, about preparing young people for the future, which we don't even know yet. I think this is one of the biggest challenges. And the World Economic Forum is often publishing those most important skills of the future. I'm sure you all know those lists. So they talk about analytical thinking, about complex problem solving, creativity. What else is there? Leadership, resilience. So a lot of those social skills, things that can't be even done by machines yet, because that's actually the competition in the future. Machines will replace human workforce in many areas, and the question is, how do you stay relevant as a human being, as a person? And in addition, I think, especially when I look at young people, I think there are topics that need to be kind of part of education, just mindfulness, calming down, maybe some digital detox from time to time, simply because there's so much going on in this space out there. Also topics like, how do you cope with pressure? How do you cope with expectations? We see the pressure that is put on young people today. And I think there's a lot of things going on that we need to be aware of when we're in the field of education. And we're also, I don't know, teachers and all these organizations really need to take a look at it and support young people. So that's kind of my view on the skills.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with some of the things you said. I know here in Silicon Valley, as part of this tech diplomacy, where we have governments talk to tech companies, one of the big things we have focused on this past year is disinformation, and how do we build more digital literacy for our citizens and for our students who are growing up in this world where all the information is always accessible and not all of it's true, or not all of it's 100% true. And so how do young people navigate this whole world where they grow up, not knowing what they could even trust, or that they could trust anything? So it's definitely a challenging time to really prepare our populations for this future.
Yeah, and the truth is that that the truth is relative. So I think in the end we all have to find our own truthness, in all the information we get, and the filters we have and everything. And I really like, Marko, also what you said, and it made me think of this saying from Erich Kästner, who said, don't even trust your textbooks from school. Like, even doubt them, like you can't doubt or be critical enough. And I think this should really be the main focus when it comes to education, build your own opinion and then stick to it, and to be courageous also to step up and talk about it, what you think.
And then I know Marko mentioned a few specific skills like resilience and critical thinking for the future. Does anybody else want to share any, maybe specific digital skills that might be relevant that you see at this moment from your perspective?
I think the funny thing is those.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
You're good.
I just want. I just wanted to add, the funny thing is that those are not even digital skills. We're talking here about digitalization, but none of them is actually digital or in the field of digitalization. The thing is, my experience with young people, they know that stuff. They know how to use those tools. I mean, I remember I got my first computer when I was like, I think 13, and I kind of thought I'm a digital native. But working now with this so-called Gen Z, as Jasmin mentioned, they are worlds between us. They really know how to use digital. Pardon?
May I ask which year are you born?
82. I'm turning 40 this year. Yeah. So these are different universes. It's so interesting to see, and you give them a task, and they will come up with tools and potential solution and paths to their solution which I would have never thought of. So they know digitalization, they know the tools. I think it's more important for them also to learn what can I do with them and how do I cope with all the other things around. Sorry, Sam, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it's a webinar. It's going to happen. I think you're absolutely right, and I think from my perspective, looking at it, I think one of the biggest ones is one, it's data literacy, and obviously the data side again. But let me preface that with there's this I don't know if I call it a fact or an occurrence or just a habit, basically, with people that they write themselves off from things that they don't necessarily know. You know, we talk to a lot of people about being able to be a critical thinker with data, and most people, and I still to this day, I'll talk to them about it and they'll say, well, I'm not a math person. That's not for me. I'm not a data person. And I'm like, well, we're all data people, you know, and also it's that acceptance that like, I can be something that I'm not labeled as, so that I haven't been a part of the box of already. You know, my degree from universities in graphic design, but here I am working at a data company and, you know, working on education. So it's something that I think a lot of times it's just that openness. So when we're looking, especially at this next generation of thinking, that it's really easy to feel like you have to be slotted into something. And I mean, that's a question that was asked constantly, especially when I was a kid, was, what do you want to be? What do you think you are? And I think that evolves. But part of it from our perspective is just that you need to be able to speak that language. And literacy has always been a big part of our lives, right? And up until this point, data has been a part that companies or like organizations use. It's not something that people use, right, in the world. But when we think about how often we talk data with other people, it's ingredients in food, it's, you know, schedules for things that we're working with, it's where do I spend my money, what things is how much time am I spending on Amazon shopping, and it's really important that people understand the ability or that they need the ability to be literate with that information, and that's a big part of what we're trying to enable people with, is the ability to decipher, synthesize, be able to use that information for their own good and then for others' good. And then again, to just make sure that they understand truly what's going on behind the scenes. Truth is relative. Facts even anymore feel relative, right? I mean, so many people stand on what they consider facts, and it's not taking things at face value. So it's that skill of being able to think like beyond that thing that I see and not just take it as it comes, but then go in and explore it. I mean, and understand what's behind the scenes in that. What's the motivation? Why did somebody create this? What's their sample size look like? And these are all literacy skills or data literacy skills that are required. I mean, you need this to be a responsible citizen these days. It's not something that's optional anymore.
Yeah, I think something that goes in line with what you both just said is also the question of access, obviously, because now we're talking about the Western world, all the people who have had the opportunity to grow up like this. And I just want to highlight this because I think it's quite essential to not forget that not everybody is as privileged to be in this position. And also, I want to add here that apart from the digital skills that become more and more important, I think we need those bridge people. I call them bridge people. So people who understand data language, let's say, maybe they are not technicians or something, but they also understand like the needs, let's say, of the media or marketing or something. And I think it's so really beautiful to see that we're moving away from, you know, like old patterns. And I see it as something very positive, that something new can unfold, and it really depends on every individual person to go in which direction, whatever direction they want to go.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all so much for those great comments. I love the line about how we are all data people, because I think sometimes, like, I never thought of myself as a data person until I found myself even in my own job having to use, you know, spreadsheets to, you know, visualize data that I've collected over the years. So it's really, really exciting to see that. And then to what Jasmin said, I completely agree that there's a huge question of access, because as we talk about digitalization, it's affecting, I mean, it's happening everywhere, but some places faster than others, and some places have more access than others. And so this kind of nicely transitions into our how segment. And so my first question for here is, you know, how should we deal with some of these challenges, such as access? it's a big one to just start out.
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, one of my favorites right now. And my boss is probably a little tired of hearing this because it's the hill that I will die on. I promise. Well, hopefully, I don't die. But with access, I mean, it is such a huge piece of it, and especially, gosh, I mean, around the world. But to Jasmin's point, and this is the point that's really a tough pill to swallow, is that even though we talk about flattening the playing field and giving everyone access to something like this, like if they don't have the internet, then that doesn't matter. If they don't have a computer and they can't use it, or a phone, like that's not equal access. That's not even access, and it's not helping everyone there. So I think the first part of it is reducing or eliminating the cost to be able to do these programs. So it should be free, right? People should be able to get access to this just across the board. I mean, if we think about it from a worldwide prosperity standpoint, the more information people have, the more we can work together as a unit to be able to accelerate growth, to make things better, to help people actually get that access. I'd say the second part of it is that there's a lot of great organizations doing work within these communities where people don't have access, where it's underprivileged or has just never had access in the past. And it's I think, unfortunately, human nature where we want to come in and kind of bulldoze our way in and say, do this, I'm giving you this thing that you have to do now because it's going to help you. And instead, I think the answer to that is that we come in and understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. And we partner with their programs and try to take what we value or what we've built and say, how can we incorporate this into what you're doing? You already have the audience, you already know your population, you know the people around you. How can I support you in doing this? So that we can get that education to those people. And then also the last part is just that not everybody's going to learn the same way, right? I mean, there's a massive spectrum of neurodiversity, even if we look at just that one aspect of it. And it's really important that we meet people where they are and that we're not trying to teach everything with one single method. So that's a big part of it, is just being flexible on our end when we develop, so that we're developing programs that meet everyone where they are.
Yeah, thinking about access, one thing that really gets me excited is when you think about it is how many people are out there that still don't have access to proper education or even the internet, and think about how much potential there is. I don't know, it's like 3 to 4 billion people right now still waiting for proper access to internet and education. And once you unlock that potential, holy moly, I can't wait for that. Just thinking about what's going to be possible there. And for me, we work with so many young people in so many countries. We are just about to launch our first on-site program in Ghana, so in Africa, in a developing country. What I heard there, technology is not a problem, at least for that bootcamp. I'm not sure if it's like a standard or not, but so far they promised everything is going to be fine, also in terms of technologies, internet connection, devices on site, and all that stuff. But in general, when I think about all these countries where they might have still limited access, looking at the entire development in terms of technologies, we know that technology is developing exponentially. Prices are dropping exponentially, and there are different companies working on those topics. I think SpaceX is behind it, Google is behind it, Facebook is behind it. So they're all launching different technologies, satellites, balloons, whatever it may be, to provide people with proper internet access. And so for me, it's just a matter of time till these things are being solved. So I don't think we should now wait till those things get solved, but just keep going. And yeah, it's a matter of time till we can reach everyone if we want to.
I think an additional very important point is to how to explain this, to tell people that they want to learn. So maybe if somebody's raised in an environment where it's just not normal to okay to go to school, but then maybe continue learning, let's say it this way. How can we reach those people who inside have so much talent, and maybe also they would love to learn, but they don't know about it right now just because they're in the wrong context? So I think that's also a big challenge for us, because it might be many individuals. So it's not a broad mass maybe that you can talk to. And this would also mean like talking to like people one-to-one probably, and really like what you also said before, and ask them, what do you want to achieve in your life? Or where do you see yourself? Or these are the opportunities that are. So I think that's also something we need to think about when talking about access. And also something I was thinking is that especially in the tech area, I think many people don't go this like straight line, and maybe they don't even study like software development or something, they just do it on their own. So we also need to encourage people to try. I think digitalization is also like goes in line with courage and trying, and also not being afraid to fail, because yeah, life goes on, you know.
That's a great point, Jasmin. And I think that fits perfectly into our next question that I also see was asked in the chat here. So how do you all think students, you know, can be taught to reach their fullest capacity, to get past this fear of failure? And how do you enable the best and brightest to achieve this, you know, fullest potential? And the person, Slav, in the chat asked for specific examples if you have them.
So I very much believe that if you, so I can always only speak based on what I've experienced with our pirates, with our young people. And what I saw is when you give young people some purpose, you know, something that they believe in, something where they say, wow, this is mine and this is bigger than me. Well, with us, with Moonshot Pirates, is usually the idea that they work on. And then you give them resources, which in our case would be the mentors that work with young people, and simply the freedom to do. Not telling them, okay, you need to do it this way or you need to do it this way, but you tell them, hey, this is now your thing, and it's on you what you're gonna do with it and how far you are gonna get. What I've experienced is they become unstoppable once they have those three elements combined. And in our boot camps, it actually happens. So the first day is super intense. They almost fall asleep at 8 p.m. and the workshop is not even over, the first one. And then around 10 p.m. they finally have the idea, they have the team, and they see, okay, wow, this is now my thing. And I'm not exaggerating when I say in almost every boot camp they stay till 5 a.m. in the morning, they keep working. And at 7 a.m. they are back for breakfast and then back at the project, and they keep working. So this is, you know, once you create this encouraging, I don't know, environment where you allow creativity to happen, where you allow innovation to happen. And Jasmin, you mentioned something very important: allow to fail. You know, you can't be creative and innovative if you're not allowed to fail. And at school, you know, we get grades on the results instead of the process that we went through. You know, the more you try, the better your grades should be, actually. And this is what we very much believe in at Moonshot Pirates. And I recently watched, I think it was on Mind Valley, a course with Jim Quick. He's this super brain guy teaching about fast reading and all these kinds of things. And he raised an interesting thought. It was about this emotional connection that you have to learning. When we think back at our time in school, you know, what was the emotion that we experienced? It's usually you are bored, sometimes you're annoyed. So, you know, not really positive emotions. And now think about how much you remember from that time in school. And then think about one thing that actually got you excited, where you were completely, you know, committed and dedicated, and yes, I want to do that. You will actually learn that stuff because you believe in it, because you want to do it, because it drives you. And you know, once you work on something that it gets you excited, you will also remember more, and so let's say the educational impact will be higher. This is now talking from my experience and my perspective at Moonshot Pirates.
I'll jump in real quick too. I think some of what Marko said resonates really well, and a lot with what we're doing over on RM2, which I haven't talked about it too much yet, but one of the things that we do is called Data Literacy for All, which is it's a free e-learning education platform teaching people how to be literate with data. And then we'll be doing the same thing with a program called Data Skills 10 Million, which is a program we're launching, again, free education, just trying to get people up to speed to be responsible citizens. But to that point, I think as we're building those or as we've developed them, relevance and application are critical. I know this is a little bit more tactical, not quite so high level, but it has to be something that they can relate to and that they see value in. You know, when I went to school a while ago, yeah, Jasmin, you asked about when we were born, right? I was right around there with Marko, so I was 1980. But school for us was you sat down in front of something and it was just expected that you would learn. And that was there wasn't really a choice. There was no way around that. And as the generations are coming up, there's kind of a rebellion against that. It's saying, okay, well, I'm triaging my time. And is this worth my time? And is this worth my finances? Because at the end of the day, if I go to university and out of all that I did, I can only get a job that affords me this much money, I can't even pay back my student loans, you know? So when we're looking at those things, applied or and relevant learning is really important. And then multiple formats, again, this is a little bit tactical, but giving them the ability to access it in the way that works best for them. We talked about Gen Z or Gen Z, and for that group, again, it's this quick identification of, is this worth my time? Is this the way that I want to learn it? And if it's not, they're going to find a different way. They'll go a different direction. And it's our job and it's our responsibility to be creating things that help them see themselves in this, so that they value that education and they value being able to go in and learn these different things, whether it's, you know, to be an entrepreneur or to be able to just understand stuff that they're looking at or to be a responsible citizen. So I think that's a big part of it, and it's something that's been missing in education for a long time. It's just understanding that it can't just be expected anymore. It just won't. It'll be the hill that you die on, like I said earlier, unfortunately.
And I think also something that happens is that there is a shift in generation. So it might happen that young people teach old people. And I think, again, that's so beautiful, because it should be like this, especially when it comes to digitalization and how companies work. Like, I mean, the COVID crisis or pandemic has shown us that like home office, like a much more flexible way of working actually works. Like Sam, you just said, that there are new ways, different ways, and if we give them people space and to also show us how we can develop, I mean, I think that's ideal. And so I think, yeah, but obviously many people also struggle with that because when it comes to authority or something, things are changing, and I think it's good.
Great. Thank you all so much for these responses. And now I see we're moving into our third and final little segment of our what, how, and where. So now we're in this where kind of location spot. So where do you all think students will be getting their education from? I know traditionally they learn most of their skills in school, but now there are so many other platforms and digital tools and apps that can also, you know, have a lot of educational value. So where do you all think students will be receiving, you know, their digital education skills from?
Yeah, I think if you're okay, I can start. Probably you have more tools. I can only tell you from the university side. So I believe, at least, that there are fundamental basics that we need to learn, like reading, writing, calculation, whatever. But with these basic skills and the ability to think critically, we can go out there, and we can see from our students that some students prepare for exams by watching YouTube videos, or, you know, so the way people study or learn change. And I think it's absolutely okay, again, if you know how to validate if information is right or wrong. And then people are getting more autodidact, I don't know how to say that. So it really is the responsibility of the person, I think, and whether they want to use, you know, platforms like Udemy or Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, if they can implement it into their life, I think that's just perfect.
I'll jump into, sorry, Marko.
Now it's your turn.
Do you want to go ahead?
No, please.
Okay. I think that that's absolutely right. A big part of it that we'll see is just that students right now are voting with their time. You know, they're showing us where they want to learn from. And I think it's up to us to be paying close enough attention to be able to respect that choice and say that we're willing to shift the way that we deliver so that we can meet the choice that's being made. You know, I mean, I was talking to a colleague recently about, you know, if we're so principled in the way that we decide that we want to deliver these things, then we will have our principles and no students, unfortunately. So for the students right now, they're voting on, you know, things like online learning platforms or apprenticeship programs. I mean, that's something that's changing a lot from when I was going to university. It's just that apprenticeships weren't really as much of a thing, and that's coming back in. And even right now with Salesforce, like we don't require a 4-year degree to get hired, and dropping that was a big shift. And I think that's a positive shift in that people can acquire these skills online from these different places and not have to have that university qualification as long as they have the skills that are relevant to get there. And I think that will do more for leveling the playing field. You know, we're trying to adapt to that on our end. We have, like I mentioned, that data literacy for all. It's a free e-learning, so it's self-paced. I think that's a big part of it too. Is just the students, again, like how much time do I have? What can I dedicate to this? So that's a piece of it. And then we also have things like Trailhead, where it's for people that are more readers, right, or people that want a more structured format. And those are both free. So that we joked about sales pitches earlier, but those are both free tools that people can access to help them develop these skills. But I think a lot of it, again, is just going to come down to them voting with their time and us paying attention. And then, you know, we need to be flexible. So I'd say that we're learning at the moment how to shift our perspective, you know, and to look at it from their perspective and say, okay, I understand that. Here's how we can accommodate what you're doing. And we can learn from that too. I mean, that'll make us better at delivering what we deliver and being cognizant of what's happening in the world if we can pay attention to that and, you know, and shift.
I believe it's really difficult to answer the question, where will students get their education from? But to a certain extent, probably it's going to be everywhere. You know, it's different experiences, different learnings that you have in life. But what history has shown us is that industries usually get disrupted from the outside. So yeah, I don't know, when we look at the hotel industry, Airbnb, well, they don't even own a hotel and disrupted the whole industry. Tesla is not a car company, it's a tech company disrupting the whole car or mobility market, basically. So a lot of things are happening and a lot of disruption and innovation is not happening inside the industry. And especially if you look at education, traditional education, you can say that and see that. So I expect things to happen from the outside. I also very much believe that we here, we all work on ideas and solutions that will contribute to that area. And I simply hope that that the education in the future, or the learning experiences will come from a side where it's about the future, where you think about, okay, what, you know, how can I shape the future? How can I contribute? What is my role? Education, traditional education happens very often based on past experiences. I mean, it's important to learn about history. It's important, even more important to learn probably about art and literature and all these things. Jasmin, you mentioned also the basics. But I think we should shift it a little bit and think about, okay, what can we learn from the past, but we also need to understand that we need to prepare for the future, which is kind of the topic of today's session. So I really hope that there will be more and more initiatives coming in and providing different opportunities and different options. And it's really hard to predict the future, but I don't know. I can see a future where many things have changed in terms of grades, in terms of, I don't know, maybe we don't even need universities in the future anymore, because, you know, things change so fast. But you have said in the beginning, you know, how quickly you need to adapt and to change.
Yeah, of course.
You know, when I think back at my time at the university, most of the stuff is probably irrelevant. outdated today. So, you know, information is changing very quickly, and yeah, and I think learning will be, I don't know, a vital part of that. Yeah.
I would like to jump in here. I think that's absolutely true. I can see it with the topics our students choose. They're all about the future. They are writing about climate change and how to tackle problems. So I think, again, it's about maybe like with more traditional methods, let's say it, although we're really trying to be more engaging and critical in every sense. But it's really about giving people the space to also grow their own thoughts. And I think that's something that is already happening. And that's actually something we don't have any influence on, because, you know, it's also a little bit the generation that they are aware of all the problems. They have this inner like urge to solve problems, which is so beautiful, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that we haven't mentioned, one term is still missing here when we talk about Gen Z. It's the topic of values. We see that this young generation, they have different values. You know, I thought I'm still kind of a millennial, I think, and I thought I'm so different compared to my parents. But I just recently saw a study where the step from all the other generations before then to Gen Z, that's an actual change. That there's an actual, I don't know, shift happening. And Gen Z is so different, and those values have changed so much. And I think the field of education needs to understand it, but also the field of like companies need to understand it. You know, how companies need to start asking themselves to how do I stay relevant? How do I work with those future customers? How do I produce services and solutions for people who think differently, where different things are important to them? And you mentioned climate change is the topic of equality. They are also very much prepared to work hard, you know, to get where they want to go. I know that millennials, we were more like easy. That shifted a lot actually. And yeah, this is actually something that we really need to think about when we work with young people or for young people.
Yeah, I also think that, oh, sorry.
You keep going.
No, I was just thinking, because I have also observed that especially millennials, they value their values so much, but also their free time. So for example, I know so many people, they don't want to work like the traditional 40 hours a week. They say, I can do the same in, I don't know, 25 hours. And I believe them. So I think we really need to take what they are telling us, like take it more seriously, because there are new ways and they are good.
Yeah, and as this group's token Gen Zer, I can't agree more. I feel like my peers definitely have quite the forward looking, position and are very values driven. I just want to turn our attention to some of the questions in the chat because they're very relevant to the conversations we've been having. And first one I'd like to ask is, how important do you all think a university degree is today? I know we heard some news that Salesforce doesn't necessarily require university degrees. We have a university representative, so.
Oh, I can tell you, things are changing. I think, like, if I can jump in here, I mean, I really enjoyed studying. That's why I kept with it for such a long time. I have to add that too. But I don't think it's necessary. But I never thought so, like that was never a reason for me to go on studying. I think it's always about the person. And again, how much this person wants to invest in whatever they want to do. It's much more about this. It's not about a degree. And I'm saying this in Austria, where titles are everything. And I think especially job experience is much more important, like how to deal with problems. And I know job experience is important, but at the same time, I think it's as important to give people without job experience the chance to get job experience, because I heard that many times that people are rejected because it says, oh, you don't have like you're 25, you don't have 15 years of job experience. You're like, no, of course not. So I think, yeah, is a way of trying getting to know that person and really, again, give the person the space to show oneself as a person and the values you have. Because if you tell me learn this and I'm willing, I'm sure the person will learn it the best way they can.
It seems too like, you know, the degree or just the degree itself, I think that's the part that's going to be a challenge for universities in the upcoming years, just that it's not just the step of getting the degree. And I think that's what it was when, well, I know that's what it was when I went and got mine, was that it was just the next expected step after high school, or I think that's what it's just high school. So looking at that, it would be high school, university, and then job. And I think the difference there is that when we're looking at degree now, the time is spent and should be spent when you're at that point where you're ready to focus on it. So in terms of the importance of the degree, it's valuable if you're in there and you're really focused on what you're actually trying to do, which is higher education, and you're learning the skills that you think are going to be the ones that you want to pursue and drive forward. I think where universities will need to adapt is to alter the program so that students can focus on the areas that are the ones they want to focus on at that point, or they'll choose an alternate method, you know. And I think that's where skills will start to be on par with saying, I don't have a university degree, but I can do all these advanced things. And at that point, the employer is going to say, well, I just want you to do those things. So that's great. So not to devalue a degree, just saying that the degree is important because it does show dedication and it shows that you can work through something difficult. But I think universities will need to adapt to continue to make that degree attractive so that people want to spend the time there and have the opportunity to, right? And I think that's the other part of it, is how do they open the doors to more people? And that's a problem for, I know for us in the US, is just that most people can't afford that anymore. And how do we make it so that we continue to get people through higher education and see the value in a more educated workforce, as opposed to just seeing the dollars, you know, in our face?
I very much believe that university education, well, I think it's still very important. It might change in the future, and we see more and more companies shifting and saying it's not necessary anymore, especially in the Silicon Valley. There were a couple of companies recently that said we don't require university education or degrees anymore. For me personally, one thing was very important. It's this whole social aspect. You know, you learn how to network, you know how to find information, all these kind of social skills that you can also learn in other areas. But that was one part. And obviously you learn some stuff, but I mean, I think we have already stated that you can learn stuff in many, many different ways. But one reason why I would still recommend young people to go to the university is because it's still 2022 and we are not in the future yet, but it's a topic of credibility. You know, you can say that you know something, you can say that you have certain skills, but this is our society, companies, people are not there yet. It's gonna take us some time till they accept, I don't know, somebody coming, let's say now, I mean, I don't want to advertise now our program, but they're coming from the Moonshot Pirates program. Oh, wow, you have to be amazing. Of course, I'm gonna take you. I mean, this is my vision. This is our dream. That's what we're working on. But we are not there yet. So that's why I believe, so the social aspect and this topic of credibility right now is still very important in terms of university degrees and
I would like to add something that also Sam said, that universities are changing. I can see it, for example, with the internships, because universities increasingly also support students and in the industry to work together. So for example, where I work, we also have like seminars where students have projects together with companies. And I think that's something they get a lot of value from. And in the job interview, they can talk about it too. Like they can say, I have struggled with stress or dealt with stress and whatever problem they had. So I think it's also good that universities keep up with this change and digital development.
Can I have one more thing in too? Sorry to add to the end of this. I know we're tight on time, but you know, we also have a program. It's the Tableau academic program. So from Tableau software, we actually go in and provide free licenses and education. So free curriculum to professors at universities so they can teach. And my point in bringing this up is that companies will continue, hopefully, to find ways that they can invest in the university as well and say, okay, here are some skills that we know are relevant skills. Let us sponsor this so that the university education that people are getting is more relevant to potential job market. So, and that's something that I know for us has been a big deal. And for us is that we do see the value in universities, and that's why we have this program. But we'd also like to be a part of that change to help universities prepare people for what there's a possibility of stepping into. I know that's just the first step of getting into something. It could potentially shift or morph, but being able to make it so that the universities can adopt these things without massive overhead or insane amounts of bills to be able to do it is really important to us because we see the value in that workforce. So I think that's another part of it too. When we think about the importance of the degree, is that organizations need to continue to pour into universities. You know, we can't just stand on the sidelines and criticize without stepping in to do something and saying, hey, instead of us just judging the way you're doing it, let us add into it. Let's partner on this so that people coming out of this come out ready for something, you know, and come out with skills that they feel are applicable right off the bat.
But that was great. I realize we are almost at time here, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for this wonderful conversation, and thank you to all of our attendees. I know we got a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm sorry that we weren't able to make it to them all, but we will try and follow up with you later. And I'd like to thank each of our panelists for taking this time to join us for this exciting conversation.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. This was fantastic.
Thank
you everyone so much. Oh yeah. Thank you everyone so much for joining us here today, and we hope to see you at our next Digital Imperative episode. And we also hope you got some takeaways for education's future. So we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care, bye.